It's an exciting Tuesday, and we are here once again to take a look at issues globally as it affects you and I on the International Forum. I am Wilson Omasha. Well, today is the 27th day, if I'm making a mistake, of Russia invasion into Ukraine. It's been one story or the other. It's been media polarity when you talk about the war in Ukraine. You get to hear this media supporting this, the other media saying what you're saying is not correct. You get to hear also of some statements saying we are dealing heavy blows on the Russian troops, but Kiev is under attack, Mariupol is besieged, and you get to hear of the vacuum bomb, you get to hear of the ultrasonic missile, you get to hear also of some persons testing weapons, you get to hear leaders divided on this particular issue. You get to hear someone saying, NATO, you guys are cowards. Come on, declare no-fly zone. Help us out here. You also get to hear we can supply you weapons, but we just can't interfere. That's the most we can do. You get to hear I want to march onto Ukraine to fight against the Russians. You also get to see some machineries being caught. So things are happening. You get to hear about the upsurge of oil prices. Get to hear about looking for alternative routes. So many stories are making the round occasion about this war. And believe you me, the world is really feeling the impact. With me here in the studio to talk about this, I have a legal practitioner and of course a human rights activist. Join me to welcome Barrister Osaho Osazua. Barrister, welcome to International Forum. I appreciate your coming.
Thanks for having me. It's always my pleasure being here.
Right. And sitting very close to him, he is a vibrant youth, a political analyst and entrepreneur. Join me to welcome Sonny Ubebo. I hope I got that name correctly. It's you, sir. That name, it's you, sir.
You need to work on that.
I have to work on it. Definitely, I'm going to work on it. Welcome to International Forum, sir. I appreciate your coming.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon.
Day 27 and counting. Barrister Osaho Osazua. When the war started, many people just thought or were like of the opinion that Russia would just outrun Ukraine. It's going to be an easy peasy, a walk in the park. But here we are. 3 weeks and counting, the war is very much on. What do you feel about all this? We'll talk about various issues emanating because of the war.
Yes, thank you very much. It reminds me of what the board of Havon, that's William Shakespeare, said, that let Hercules himself do all he may, the dog will still bark, and the cat will still bark, and the dog will still have his day. It shows also that it's not by power, it's not by... I've said it oftentimes that the use of force cannot guarantee you victory. So many things is at play. That is why Al-Qaeda has not yet been decimated completely, even for over 20 years now since the 9/11 issue. So that's it. It's not overwhelming force that guarantees victory. It is determination, it is resilience, and it is focus. So we have seen a Putin that is being disgraced, so to speak. And the fact that he's been disgraced is not a good one, because he might resolve and resort to more aggressive tactics. He has the capacity to make trouble for everyone, and we pray it doesn't get there. But he thought he would just enter Ukraine, and before you know it, he will pass through the back door, and will enter through the front door. But that's not happening. There's stiff resistance. People are laying down their lives for their country. People realize that freedom is worth fighting for. That's what is life if you don't have ideas that you can die for. Like Martin Luther King said, that man is not even worthy to be alive unless he has found something that he can give himself up for. And the Ukrainian people, they have resolved. They have coalesced and they have decided to fight this cause. Because it's a just war. Like Machiavelli said that a necessary war is a just war. And that where there is salvation only in arms, those arms becomes holy. As we speak now, the necessary work was brought to the Ukrainian people, and they have nothing but to fight. They are not surrendering. Surrendering is to accept that not only you are dying, but your children unborn will also die. That servitude and slavery will be your portion. And nobody wants that. And they are giving Putin a good run for his money. He's now realizing that no, it's not as he thought it would be. He thought it was going to be a blitzkrieg to make sure the Nazis and tactics. But he's getting something more than just a blitzkrieg. He's getting resistance. People are spilling blood and people are staying alive just to ensure that Ukraine continues as we know it before.
All right. Now, from what he said Putin has been disgraced in this war. He talked about the steep resistance of the Ukrainians. So what do you feel about this? Is he really been disgraced in the war?
Well, as much as I respect people's views on issues, regardless of what it is, I personally think that it's almost like we are not on the same planet, because outside the fact that my brother here, Barrister, has mentioned whatever he needed to talk about and speak on issues to do with Putin losing the war, and the more we say that, the more we see more refugees living in Ukraine. So personally, I don't want to fully agree to that particular disposition, because there's no smoke without fire. Every situation has its beginning, and to a large extent also has an end. The history that surrounds the whole dilemma to do with the Russian problems has been quite something that happened for many years. You know, there is a different interest from different continents, you know, from the parts of Europe who play what the Chinese will say, and at the same time, what the essence of Russia going into Ukraine and achieving a kind of a walkover. I think it is also important to look at some of the aspects to do with how the Donbass and the Donetsk region has had problems over time to this point, whereby they constantly and continuously have some kind of infighting going on within Iran. And at the end of the day, if people felt that, Russia, which is Putin, is being aggressive without looking at other aspects that has led to that aggressiveness, then I think it's something that is subject to debate.
All right, so that is subject to debate. Now, you talked about Putin being disgraced, but you get to hear about President Zelensky complaining. You get to see the devastation caused by Russia in Ukraine, talking about the Donbass region. Those been captured by the Russians. Now Kiev and Mariupol, they're under serious fire. And it got to an extent that the president became so frustrated because NATO refused, even UK and US refused to declare a no-fly zone over Ukraine. Take a look at it from that angle. Do you think that Putin is getting the results he really wanted in this invasion?
If you took a good look at what is happening, look at Russia vis-a-vis Ukraine, you will realize that this is more than classical David-Goliath contest. Ordinarily, Ukraine should stand no chance. Ordinarily, Ukraine should have been decimated in 2 hours. But like you said, this is the 27th day. That has not happened. That tells you something, that tyranny has to be confronted, that evil has to be seen for what exactly it is, evil. That there is no justification whatsoever, whether remotely or whether immediately. I cannot in all honesty contemplate any defense for Putin. I have tried hard as I can to understand the workings of the mind of this man, or what necessitated this war. Was this war necessary? What was at play? And I have seen that there is no such case that I could make or can make for Putin. I haven't said that. Let us understand, because people continue to say that the people in the Donbass and the Donetsk region were being oppressed, that they will not be carried along by the vast majority of the Ukrainians. If you remember, I was here during the 2014 revolution that Viktor Yanukovych, that they drove out Viktor Yanukovych, the pro-Russian president. And I did say, if you remember, that it wasn't right. It wasn't right. Because you have a pro-Russian president who was teaching to the West, even when Russia was then trying to give them a loan that was even kind of better than the one IMF and the Western Europeans were offering the Ukrainians, but they were in deep economic shit. But having said that...
watch your language now.
I'm sorry about that. Yes, they were in deep they were having deep financial issues then. Yes. But you see the Klitschko brothers coming and then they gather at what they call the square, Manden, and then, and I did write about from Manden to madness. So that was that. But the key issue now is Putin. What exactly does Putin want? When you are entering a place, when you want to do something, you must have set objective. Is it to incorporate the Donbass and the Donetsk region into part of into Russia, or what? And if that were so, like he said, to denazify Ukraine, and that the people, the Russian-speaking part of Ukraine, were being oppressed. If that were true, if I were to concede that in the magnanimity of my heart, why dropping bombs in Mariupol? Why dropping bombs in Kyiv? Why all these things outside those regions that you said your people were being oppressed? Because he has an agenda. He wants to decimate Ukraine because he thinks he can. But I don't like it when the strong think they can always have what they want and the weak must always yield what they must. It's a mentality. It's a tyrannical way of thinking. It's a way that shows that force is everything. Because you think you have the power that you can get what you want. Mankind has moved past that. And for crying out loud, we have to fight 2 world wars to go past these things. And for almost 70 years, Western Europe and the rest of us have no peace, only for this guy to prop up and say, because I said it on that platform. I said that if Hitler were alive today, and doing everything he did, killing those 6 million Jews in the concentration camp, they are good people that will still sit and make a case for Hitler. Okay. And it baffles me. Okay. They will tell you the Poles should have surrendered. They will tell you that the people in the what they call the Sudeten, the part of Czech then that we were talking about, that we are not allowing the Germans to breathe in quotes, that they should seize those lands. People still make a case for him. Okay. And it's a frightening human nature. All
right, now let me come to you, Etios. From what he said, he just can't figure out what Putin wants in this war. And some are saying the war fought by the Ukrainians is a just war. They're fighting for their lives, they're fighting for their independence, they're fighting to return, to sustain their freedom. Now, from what Putin is doing, does it really make sense to you?
Well, personally, I've never thought that there's any point where people go to war that is something you will applaud. War is never a good thing. And I will stand by that anytime, any day. Because as we can see today, it is the Ukrainian citizens that are suffering with the decision that has been made by the president of Ukraine, who probably never was a student of history. As much as we can feel emotional over a particular proclamation of what the Western media are saying, I think personally we must kind of learn to understand that it is not all that glitters that is gold. If anybody has a case to make, the case in that instance must not be considered to be one-sided. You know, by the time you are banning this and banning alternative views, for people to look at programs online or on TV and be able to build a more robust understanding, automatically there's already a foul play. Because the truth of the matter is everything to do with the other side of the stories has always kind of been suppressed on the media platform. For instance, it's just like when they play politics. If a particular station is pro a particular political party, everything they say goes along those lines. I would say TVC, for instance.
I would want us to mention the stations, okay, let's just leave it at that.
Let's just put it at that level. Yeah. Sometimes they speak along a certain line because of interest. You see, when there were problems in Iraq, when the US invaded Iraq, there was this instance of alternative views from the Iraqi TV. And while they were reporting those information back to the general public, they claim at a point that the American Apache helicopter fired at the journalists who were from Iraqi TV, which the US denied in totality. But when secret documents were released under compromise by the CIA agents in Edward Snowden and his crew on WikiLeaks, you realize that those things that they said was not true was actually true. Nobody had the opportunity to see that aspect of an Apache helicopter firing at a clearly written Iraqi TV van with lots of people and there were casualties. So to that extent, you will know that this war game is just something that benefits a few and to the detriment of so many. I repeat it again, the Ukrainians are suffering. A lot of the Ukrainians has moved out of Ukraine now. They never wanted war, but for some reason you ask, why would Putin want to do X, Y, Z? He think he can just go in and take over the country. No, if he wanted to take over the country before, he would have done that. The issue of NATO as a military, formation is what they feel they don't need close to their border. These are history, things that have been going on for the past 20 years. There've been agreement between the world superpowers to say, well, we'll allow Ukraine to be independent like Switzerland, Sweden, and all these other countries. What stops them from allowing Ukraine to be independent and they can do business with both sides of the continent and grow their economy? Now, what Russian president is doing, Putin, he believes that he's fighting to defend a kind of a possibility of the Russian state being officially demoralized in time, because no agreement that they've reached before that the Western counterparts, according to them, has ever agreed or stick to.
Are you not heaping the blame on Zelensky, the president of Ukraine? Is that what you're saying right now?
I wouldn't particularly heap the blame on Zelensky. Zelensky to me is like a pro-Western president who's like a tool. It reminds me of Osama bin Laden. He might be used to the detriment of the Ukrainian people, because at the end of the day, since they've been fighting this war, no-fly zone has not been implemented. Putin has threatened them to say, look, if you want to cut me to size, China did not agree with the Americans. India did not agree with the Americans. The Pakistanis did not agree with the Americans. The Belarusians did not agree with the Americans. I think it was Hungary. They said it flat out that we're not sending any arms because they know that this war is a needless war. If you've ignited and pushed Putin to a point whereby he feels he needs to go into Ukraine and do whatever that is doing, which we personally don't think is a good thing, he's doing it for the understandings that he had. All these other countries that are independent, they're not at war. What stops Ukraine from being independent? You are giving people arms, but you're not coming up to say, you know what, I want to stand up to Russia because I'm the one telling you to do X, Y, Z. I'm the one telling you to join NATO. Your hands are off. You are far away in America, in the American continent. You are making people's life ungovernable on this aspect. Zelensky cannot match Russia now. Russia is pounding them. Only the Western media you listen to now, all the alternative view, the pains and the devastation that has happened in Ukraine. If you hear it and you understand the facts around this issue, you will not come to a national TV and argue for a country that you know has invaded over 5 countries before now. Russia can turn around and say, well, America invaded Iraq. What was the point of going to that war? America got rid of Gaddafi and invaded Libya through NATO. What was the point of going to that war? They did the same with Afghanistan. Because America is a superpower. They did the same with, I think, one of the Soviet countries, one of the Eastern European countries. They did it with Serbia. They did it with Syria. Yeah. So all these problems has always been a tool of war. The minute the war starts, you start to supply arms. The problem never stops. And you know that Ukraine cannot really fight Russia militarily.
Okay.
Why do you push them to do those things and then turn around and say, well, the Russian president is the bad guy, is this and that, when people cannot even think and say, you know what, this is like Black Lives Matters. If you say Black Lives Matters in the 21st century, it's an insult to the black race and the contribution they've made to the Western countries. Black people in America does not really get justice as much as white people do.
I'll come back to you. I'll come back to you. Well, also, you heard him. He said there's always though he's not in support of the war, but there's a reason behind it. And he's saying that the U.S., he fingered the U.S. in so many other acts, but the one causing all this confusion, and he wouldn't really heap the blame totally on Zelensky. According to him, he's just like a tool. Take it up from there.
I'm speechless, honestly. I don't just
Why are you speechless?
Yes, I am. When my colleague was talking, I heard him several talk about Zelensky doing this, Zelensky doing that. When it came to Putin, Putin was pushed. He was forced to go and fight, to go and drop bombs. That is language I was saying. That he didn't want to do it, to go and drop bombs on children and go and decimate people who were just on their own. Reluctantly, it became necessary for him to start the war. It wasn't the aggressor. It was Zelensky that was kind of the bad guy for fighting back. for not sleeping and allowing Russian tanks to roll over the whole of Ukraine and take over, that they are not independent. He did measure independence. Now let's look at it. As we speak now, Ukraine is a sovereign nation. The United States is a sovereign nation. And so too is all the 29 members of NATO. And Nigeria is a sovereign nation. What is key there is that you have defined territory, what they call territorial integrity. You have a border that is defined, and you are autonomous in your government. That presupposes something, that you are almost a legal entity. You are like a company. You can make decisions, you can make choices. This is what you want, this is what you don't want. Somebody is telling me that a guy who started raining bombs on defenseless civilians just because he fears, what they call in Latin quaterment, because he fears that he's thinking that this Ukraine might go and join NATO. They might go and join NATO because he fears that they might go. They have not joined NATO. They have not done anything. And it's not that they have the right. The Ukrainians are independent. They have the right to join. But they have not even joined. That these people might go and join NATO. You bring fight and death and destruction and fire to them. And I should be comfortable with that. That you reluctantly, you were forced by the West because they use propaganda, they control the global media. There must be some good, that imputing must be kind of good. They say good in it that we are not seeing, that the CNN and the BBC and the Al Jazeera, they are covering it. I've been on several platforms and I see good people make this point. And I say, no, okay, tell me now, what is the issue now? Why this invasion? And I'm not seeing the answer. Why was this invasion necessary? Why was this war necessary? Was it not avoidable? They would tell me that there was an agreement. There was never an agreement where Ukraine said and the West said that Ukraine would never be a member of NATO. And for crying out loud, Ukraine is not the only former Soviet entity that has joined NATO. There are several that have joined NATO. Why is Ukraine now peculiar? Why is Ukraine now so? Do I not have the right to join what I want to join?
All right.
If I'm really independent, don't I have the right to join? If Russia is so good, is so benevolent, is a nice guy, why would the guy so close to your neighbor? Why would not necessarily gravitate to you, even in terms of geography? That which should be your force. They should have the force. What do they call it? You could naturally gravitate. And I also tell you, do you know that more than half, about 70% of Ukrainians speak Russian? These are people who are historically linked. Why would they not like to go back to them?
All right.
Are you getting it? Yeah. If they are so good.
Okay.
So, but for some reasons, they realize that, look, this is tyranny. They realize that this is not the kind of life that they want. In this modern world, when people are tilting towards economic power, that guy is doing smarter bombs, making his bombs bigger, making the size of his army larger. In this 21st century, all right, when you put South Korea to Russia together, do you think they are mates? No, but in terms of economy and in terms of good life, they are not mates. But no, people, the Putins of this world, the Kims in Korea of this world, they will have us believe that might is right. That your bomb should buy, if you want to, that it's an existential thing for your bomb to be bigger than your neighbors. That if your bomb by any means is not bigger than your neighbor, you are in problem. All right. Because I think that is what defines modern man. In this 21st century,
I'll come back to you. I'll come back to you, sir. When you heard it, you want to react, you now have your turn right now. Go ahead, right to the points he made.
I'm bewildered by his disposition and perhaps his feeling towards history. If he was a student of history, I don't think he would be one-sided to a very large extent. I'm very surprised that he has not mentioned what happened between the Americans and the Cubans. You know, you're talking about division, why the Ukrainians are not tinted towards the Russians, when you know that the Russians were governing over them over time. How many times have you seen anybody who governs over you and feels that there's a model that they've used, maybe an aggressive model, and that will change overnight? Of course not. You live in Nigeria, for God's sake. Even in your own country, Nigeria, you see the diversity here. Nationalists, we're all Nigerians. We only become Nigerian when we leave the shores of this land because we both suffer the same fate. But within the country, the division in the country is not something that we want to promote. We want to promote harmony. We don't want to promote disharmony. But at the same time, you are here in your country. You can use it as an empirical fact that there's a lot of division. That is why the issue of the IPOB and the Southwest uprisings.
You just hold on. You just hold on to your thought. Okay, we'll return after this break. We'll continue with the discussion. Don't forget, day 27, and Russia is still hammering Ukraine. But Ukraine also, they are resisting fiercely against the Russian forces. Don't go. We'll be right back. Thank you so much for staying tuned. If you just joined us, this is International Forum. Today, May 8th, 27th day of our Russian invasion into Ukraine. Many pundits have been talking about this, but me here in the studio, I have two vibrant gentlemen expressing their opinions and, of course, their views. You get to realize that from their opinions and, of course, their views. One is like, I don't know, pro-Russian, or like, pro-Ukrainian with good points. They are raising good points for and, of course, against, everything that has to do with this invasion, so to speak. So, just to continue with the points you were making before we went on that break.
So, like, what I was saying was that because my brother here emphasized on the reasons why there would not be dialogue as to why Russia shouldn't have gone into war, which is, I don't support war because war creates a lot of havoc. When you look at the pictures and the devastation across Ukraine, you will know that it is you that wears the shoes that know where it pains you. Zelensky has spoken to the US Congress, has appealed to the European Parliament. They've not been able to come and do the basic military drills that will help them protect them from this assault. And this assault is just like 15% of the 100% they could possibly receive. If it is not an ideology of certain people trying to use it to achieve an aim and objective. I'll go back to Libya. Libya was a beautiful country. I don't know what you would say about that when they were invaded using NATO. Gaddafi was bombed for, in quote, if it's in this world, we don't feel safe. But since Libya has gone into that war, the country has been destroyed. The people are suffering now. Go to Syria, the same thing happened. In the last 20 years, the US as a superpower, working with the European Union, has gone to more war than Russia can possibly go to. So in this aspect of war, what is the difference between the war in Ukraine and the one that happened in Iraq, Afghanistan, the one that happened in Libya, the one that happened in Serbia, the one that happened in Syria? Even in our own country here, you see a lot of the problems we have with the sophisticated arms. These are all interest. So Russia is, in quote, thinking that they are fighting for their own interest because they've made it clear as a sovereign nation, all these nations that are mentioned up to Yemen, they are all sovereign nations. They are people that have the right to determine who they do business with. But for some reason, if I ask him now to take over the floor and tell me what is the reason why 4, 5, 6, 7 countries were invaded and people were displaced across the Persian Gulf, what would he say to me? He probably will have nothing to say to me. So at the end of the day, a lot of the things that is happening, you can tell clearly that it's for a reason. When Donald Trump was there, he had his own shortcomings as president of the US. Now we have
Joe Biden,
who is much of an elderly man, who is supposed to be like a father, because America has one of the biggest economies. They practically call the shots. Instead of them creating war and saying, you two go and fight, why not come in and dialogue? Right. The Russians has constantly said that there was a NIPS agreement that they should follow in terms of the shelling and the quarrel between the rebels in Donbass and Donetsk for the last 8 years. And those issues were shoved aside. They never talked about it. Right. You cannot just, because you feel that, for example, in our country, we're a Commonwealth country, our sovereignty and alignment is more to the United Kingdom. And you feel that because the United Kingdom have influence over us and we've not suffered much from them, it doesn't necessarily mean that the government of the day will just get up and do certain things without considering the Western interest. Right. So to come here and tell me that somebody is defending Putin is this and that, when you never had a personal confrontation or engagement with him, it becomes a kind of a little thinking. Because don't forget, the same Putin you're talking about, the same Russia, is supplying cheap gas across to Europe.
Okay.
They've been doing business for the last 20 years. In the last 20 years, why did Russia not invade Ukraine?
I'll come back to
Why
you.
did wars that things that did not say never led to that sort of thing? I just want to finish this point.
Right.
Are you telling me that as big as China, there's nobody that is sensible in China? Why they will not take a part of somebody who may have taken the wrong part? I think it is true that the US has done many good things. It is also good for us to let them know that this whole thing about this war in Ukraine, if they had a pro-Russian president in Ukraine, do you think the Russian Federation will want to invade Ukraine because they failed to agree to some of the things they talk about?
You just hold on, Matthias. Let me come to you, Barrister Osahos, as well. You heard his point, the point he raised. If you take a look at the situation right now on the ground, we have countries like North Korea, where you said North Korea, the supreme leader, you have some doubts about some other things, the way he governs his people. You take a look at China also, Xi Jinping didn't take side. You go to the United Arab Emirates, they didn't take side. They're talking about dialogue and, of course, peace. Saudi Arabia, the same thing, they say, look, we just can't take side because this war is truly uncalled for, to the extent that they even welcome al-Bashar, the president of Syria, and that didn't go down too well with the U.S. But still, it's like everyone is doing what they need to do just to maintain stability. Haven't taken a look at this. I don't think though war isn't good, don't you think that Putin is like fighting for the survival of this territorial integrity of a nation called Russia? And on the other hand, that Zelensky might just be a pawn without even knowing that he's a pawn to a bigger power as play. Take it up from there.
Yeah, thank you very much. My take on the West and then on several other matters are well known. They are legion, both on this platform and online. I've had cause to speak robustly about them. You recall what I call the hypocrisy of the West. How they tell you not to do this, and then they do it. That's a given. I'll never be a big fan, but I've been clear-eyed about things and about issues. And this very issue of Russia, I have tried to make a case for this same Putin, and I have not seen none. Except, you see, there's this association by default, this logical fallacy that because what the West did in Libya, that they did something in Libya, they removed Gaddafi. On the same platform to talk about the issue of Libya and how nauseating everything was that such a man as Gaddafi should have been removed and all that. That was Libya. There's no connection between Libya and Ukraine. There's no connection between Libya and let's say even Venezuela too. I've also made a case. I made a case for Maduro. I made cases for Hugo Comandante Chavez, who is one of my heroes and all that. But in this issue of Ukraine, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. I have tried, because if you look at Putin today, you look at the dynamics today, I don't know what's happening. Except someone wants to tell me maybe there is something I'm really missing. There's the heart of it, is some tramptum of a matter that I'm not getting. What necessitated this war? Why we Putin do this? People will tell me, say, we are Cuba, that in 1962, the Cuban Missile Crisis, that this West don't really know them. They are bad. There must be that there is something that this Putin is seeing that you are not seeing. Please make me to see it. I really want to see it.
Don't forget that you talk about Poroshenko being chased out of Ukraine.
Yes.
By the West and NATO. A combination of the Klitschko brothers.
Yes. What happened there?
Wasn't that the first step that led to all this squabble in Ukraine?
That is democracy.
Hold on. He
yes,
has the floor,
that is democracy.
Okay.
That is why thousands of years ago, even Aristotle told us that this democracy, we should run away from it. Yes, it's not the best form of government. He advocated other forms of government that's better than for him. Because it is majority rules. And why was Plato afraid of majority rules? That the fact remains that throughout history, majority of men have always been fools. And that's true. They don't know, they cannot really, the majority of people, they cannot really think for themselves and make informed choices. And it's those informed choices that should underpins democracy. But since we have chosen to go the democratic ways, let number lead. Let number lead. Let us abide by the wishes of the majority, even if we don't necessarily like it. Today, majority of Ukrainians want to become members of NATO. Majority of Ukrainians want to join EU. Majority of Ukrainians want the good life. They gave them, they made a choice before then. Do you want smarter bombs or the good life? They said, what am I doing with bomb for crying out loud? They want smarter phones. They want faster planes. They want good infrastructure and to live the good life, which is Russia is failing to provide. How many of our persons today will say, I'm going to Russia? There are some of my friends, even in the US, they will say, even they are in the US benefiting from the very system. They will tell you that, look, Putin has a reason. There is something. The West, they have this propaganda. You are allowing CNN to blind you. I really don't know. So I honestly want to know. I have tried. Let me tell you something. Like, I think it was Franz Fanon that said that each time I search for man, each time I look for man in the technique of the West, I see only a succession of the negation of man and an avalanche of murders. He was speaking from a socio-communist background because he realized that of course, Russia was not at the Berlin Conference when Africa was being demarcated and shared among themselves. Russia was not there. Historically speaking, the slave trade, the slave trade was not a Russian tool. So there are so many issues like that. Yeah. But we must understand something about the West. That these are people who learn, and they learn very fast. They realized that slavery was bad. Even when majority of them in those days, because they were benefiting from this system, they didn't want to stop it. But there were few amongst them who fought with all their lives that, look, we must stop slave trade. Right. And a president have to die for it. Abraham Lincoln died not because of the world issue of slavery. That what killed him. Okay. That's why he was assassinated. There have only been few men like that, and they are still here and they have learned. Today, I tell you something. The West may not be all about, they may not be a conglomeration or a concatenation of angels. They are the good ones and the bad ones among them. But by and large, largely, I tell you, the future of mankind in the human race, in the human species, is to survive. If we have to leave the wood and to emerge and we have to have a good life, we must understand that democracy and participatory government is the future. Right. That one man cannot sit, a Putin cannot be. Does it not bother you, my brother? Okay. That there's no.
I'll come back to you. Well, you heard him. He said he just can't find an excuse for the man Putin. Yes, on various occasions he talked about the hypocrisy of the West. When we talked about the attack in Libya, his opinion was like, up saying that, look, what they did was wrong. Even in Syria, so many other talks. But he said in this case, he just can't find it. He's like, was searching for a needle in a haystack. Take it up from there.
I'll make him find it. Personally, I will not speak from both sides of my mouth. Yeah. I said that I condemn the war. I don't support the war. I remember I was here and I told you, Putin will have his way because of the military might. And all that they've created, they know exactly what they've created. And he spoke about so many things to do with the democratic processes or whatnot. He mentioned that the Ukrainians want to be pro-Europeans or Europeans. You've never probably been there. I've never been to Ukraine, but I've been to Russia. Russians use smartphones. They have McDonald's and whatnot. I don't understand where this rhetoric is coming from.
So about the good life.
The good life, they have the good life. All the Russians, billionaires are having yachts and private jets all over the places. All these things that the Western countries, the hypocrites you talked about are now freezing. The hypocrites allow them to bring in these resources. And these guys are businessmen from corrupt so-called country. By the time the money comes to the system, the money is now frozen because there's the unnecessary war created. Just like as he said, he wants to understand why, and I want to tell you why. Look at all the countries in the world that they've had problems. There are countries that is oil-rich countries. There are countries, for example, like in South Sudan, when the Arabs were killing the black Arabs, the Americans said they have no vested interest because they have no oil. Gaddafi, Iraq, either it is strategically to position militarily or to have resources. They went to Syria because of oil. They are not pro-American. They went to Libya and got rid of Gaddafi. You can't sweep the Gaddafi stain under the carpet. You can't, because this was a man that was not a good guy. It was a bad guy who Tony Blair, the former Prime Minister of the UK, got close to make sure that they found out they had no weapons of mass destruction. He had no nuclear weapon. The minute they confirmed that, instead of them to find a way to work with the tyrant, who was sometimes torturing his people, they decided to invade him. Where were you when they invaded Iraq? What is the difference? Libya. Libya was a beautiful country. A country where you get married as a Libyan citizen, they give you a house and a car, and they give you $250,000 to start off. Today, all those things are gone, and the Malaysians are now selling the same very stolen crude oil to these same people who went to invade them. So what I'm trying to say is, I'm not saying this issue is not about Putin. We must not make it about Putin. We know that in the Russian states and those places, they are a lot more kind of funny and corrupt openly than the Western countries. The issues of slave trade, you need to go back and really look at the deep history of slave trade. The way people were living, worshiping in a church, and next door they were hanging people with a trapdoor. So when you talk about slave trade and slavery, they didn't want to start it. That is what affected you and I directly. And this place were taken to build these Western countries. And today you can still tell the difference between a citizen in the country and the non-citizen and those who are kind of led on to feel like they're citizens. We're still trapped in this mental slavery. We're still slaves today in the system in the West. You know, every black person in America that's made it, the minute they go, they come up with some frivolous issues about 20 years ago, he touched a girl and he molested a woman, he's sent to prison. And all his life earnings is taken away from them. Like Mr. Crosby, the guy that did
Bill Cosby.
Stuff. Yeah, he was lucky to have gotten out of jail. Why always black people? Look at the way the guy Floyd was killed in America. They almost kind of sat on it. What I'm trying to say is that the majority of Americans are nice people because I've been there. But the ruling class needs to understand that that warmongering ideology of wanting to go to war and kill people because they produce arms that they need to test on people shouldn't be the way. Instead of quarreling with the outcome, you should quarrel with those that conceived it. Because as part of those that runs the world, there's always this idea of, oh, they are crying out. We shouldn't have allowed China become this rich. If you don't want to allow China to become this rich, automatically create hunger through economic means. Look at the issues of the coronavirus. Laboratory that was funded. They just told you that there were laboratory chemical labs in Ukraine. That they were funded. Now they say, well, it's not true. Well, we are not there. But there's always two sides to a story. So if you want to know why these things are happening, it is because as we speak, there's this insinuation about shale gas. If you know how shale gas is produced, it is done by compressing gas underneath the ground, which the Americans have been protesting against because it pollutes the water in those environs. It's contaminated. They want to produce shale gas by compressing the ground and forcing bad chemicals into the water on the ground, and it's very expensive to produce. So by so doing, when you create problem in Ukraine and Russia is sanctioned not to supply cheap energy, automatically the price of crude go up. This is what you've seen now. So producing shale gas at maybe $60 a barrel and selling at 110, 115, it makes sense.
You're talking about fracking right now.
Yes, fracking. So all these things they're doing, the fracking business has been very bad in the US. They are far away in the American continent. They are creating problems using their shares in the pawn game in Europe to achieve their aim and objective.
Okay,
we are suffering it now.
One can just say these are just conspiracy theories.
Yeah,
I just can't prove that conspiracy theory. Okay, now you just hold on. Let's just hold on. Because I kind of like this. For and of course against. Well, we're about to commence our dissent on this particular discourse. Some media houses, I wouldn't want to mention name, are giving kudos to Ukrainians. I say, yes, you guys are trying. Yes, hold on. The truth is that reports are coming up that Russians, they are pounding seriously on Ukraine, almost at the door of the capital, if they're not even there yet, Kiev. From what you can see, Zelensky has been crying, NATO, help us. US, help us. UK, do something. And nothing seems to be happening. The man got so frustrated one time, he called them cowards. Do you see Zelensky surviving this onslaught? This is the 27th. About you.
Yes, thank you very much. Why has NATO, why has the West refused to implement the no-fly zone that Zelensky has been crying about? Yeah. Zelensky realizes, and Putin also knows, that there's no way he can win the war without the overwhelming air superiority that the Russians presently enjoy. Overwhelming air superiority. there's nothing happening on ground. The invasion has stalled on ground. All we see is air bombardment. Like he said, Mariupol has been reduced to ashes. That was the next scare yesterday. And that's same for major Ukrainian cities. Russia is bombarding them like hell. That was that. There's no taking it, because they can. Putin knows he can. And that is why in the first place, that's how tyrants think. Because they can, they go ahead and they do it. My good friend here was talking about that he wanted me to know, to understand why Putin.
Actually, was acting.
And I was really wanting to listen to him. Then he went to Libya, he went to Syria, nothing about Ukraine. So we must understand there is this pattern. Because these guys did these things 4 years ago, they must also be doing it now. That there's a reason that they are doing it.
Sorry for interjecting. Before this war started, Zelensky was so opinionated, saying that they are going to join NATO. He's told everyone to listen, that this is what we want to do.
Yes.
So it's not only about people suspecting that they want to.
It's not about,
he said they are going to.
It's not about Zelensky.
You know,
since Yanukovych left, when this guy came, Poroshenko, yes, when he came, we all knew. It was pro-West. That was the effort to really join NATO, and he came on board. But they are very, you don't even know this, they are very stiff conditions that would take, that analysts were saying it will take Ukraine about 25 to 35 years if they want to implement those conditions that will not make them eligible either for the European Union or even for NATO. They don't even have it. Just like Russia itself, Ukraine is also very corrupt. It's an inherently corrupt place. Those things will take time to clean up their mess, to revamp the economy, to start. There are certain economic practices that need to put in place. This will take time. So even the issue of joining NATO now or joining EU now, it's not even on the board. It will take a long time. Wow. So why the war? People that so earnestly want to join, they are giving you conditions that will take you decades to implement.
Okay, our time is over. Now back to the question: do you see this man surviving this because of this pounding going on right now?
Yes. Let me quickly say this. There is an argument that don't give these guys, stop giving them weapons. Let Putin just finish them, or let them surrender. On one side, then that argument that look, it is immorally inherent to just allow them to go like that. Let's do the best for them. But you cannot. This cannot be done in half measures. Okay. Unless the no-fly zone is implemented, or you go either you go whole heart or you don't do anything. That's okay. Because you only prolong the war by going by these half measures that the West is doing.
Thank you so much. I know you have so much to say. I know you have, but our time is up. You have just 1 minute, Etiosa, to summarize your point. Do you see this man surviving this onslaught?
Give me a minute.
A minute. Our time is up.
Anyway, like you said, he talked about wanting to convince him about what is happening. He believed I didn't, but he didn't answer the question that you asked him anyway. When it comes to, do you see Zelensky doing X, Y, Z? He said that Zelensky never said he was going to join NATO, but you said he pronounced it that he was going to join NATO, which is, all these things is surrounded around the militarism or militarization of the country. Whether Russia's position is right or wrong, that's less for posterity to judge. But personally, I do not agree with him in his analysis of what is happening. It's not about Putin, it's about the continent. And at the end of the day, he should go back and check his history properly and tell his paymasters, those people from the West, to calm down. Because at the end of the day...
He's not a Western spokesman, because on their platform, he has spoken about the hypocrisy of the West.
He has spoken about it, he has spoken against them.
But he said in this context, he's trying to look at position to support Putin, but no.
It is better to stop, it is better to stop quarrel than to hold a fight.
Okay,
so if the West has done what they've done, it should blame them for the fighting.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. I know we'll keep observing this trend. Maybe one of these will be called back again to really talk about this issue. Thank you so much. I appreciate a wonderful analysis. But viewers out there, the war is still going on. Mariupol has been reduced to rubble, and right now they are the door front of Kiev, bombardment, air raid. We're talking about vacuum bomb, talking about supersonic missiles. Is Zelensky really right for opposing the Russians in this? Was it really right to say we're going to join NATO? Is Putin also right for using those kind of weapons against, how will I put it now, Ukrainians? Many of them have been killed. Many of them choose to run away. Is Putin correct? Use the kind of sophisticated weapon. Is it an avenue to test the power of Russia in Ukraine? People are asking these questions. What in the world is really happening? See you next week. God willing. Bye for now.